Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us here at the Johnson Space Center. Even as the Expedition 48-49 crew is making their way to the International Space Station, the pace of launch activities is picking up. We are excited to be joined today by the Expedition 49-50 crew, who will be launched to the International Space Station out of the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan the afternoon of September 23rd, U.S. time. With us today is veteran NASA astronaut Shane Kimbrough, who will be the flight engineer for Expedition 49 and the commander for Expedition 50. Next to him is first-time flyer Sergey Ryzhikov of Roscosmos, who will be the Soyuz commander for the MS-02 vehicle, and he will be the flight engineer for Expedition 49 and 50. Next to Sergey is Andrey, Borisenko, also from Roscosmos, who will also be the flight engineer for Expeditions 49 and 50. Let me turn it over to Shane. Can you tell us a little bit about what you and your crewmates will be doing on orbit?
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. We are excited about the launch last night to see Anatoly and Kate and Takuya launch beautifully out of Kazakhstan and then head up to the International Space Station. They'll be there in a few days, and we look forward to seeing them open the hatch and cross over to their new home in space for about anywhere from 4 to 6 months. For our mission, as was mentioned, we're going to launch towards the end of September. And I'm very lucky and happy to be flying with the gentleman to my right. Let me tell you a little bit about them before I get talking about our mission, if that's okay. Sergey, to my immediate right, is a pilot. Was a pilot in the Russian Air Force, flew MiG-29s and L-39s in the Russian Air Force. Very decorated, of course, in his military career. He was chosen as an astronaut or cosmonaut candidate back in 2006. In the class 14 for the cosmonauts, and he finished his training around 2009 and has been waiting for this space flight for a few years. So he's ready to go. We're excited to see his reaction to microgravity the first time he gets to experience it. To Sergey's right is Andrey Borisenko, as was mentioned, a veteran space flyer. He is an engineer by trade. He actually worked in the Mission Control Center in Moscow for many years. He worked on the motion control system for the Mir space station. And then he ended up being a flight director for Mir and the International Space Station. So a really unique background, super smart person. I'm looking forward to learning from him throughout our whole mission. He did fly on Expedition 27 and 28 back in 2011. He started out as a flight engineer on that mission, but then became the commander of the International Space Station. So again, I look to gain draw from his experience, Sergey and I both, as we enter our new home here in September. Our mission's slated to be about 5 months long. We're going to come home towards the end of February is the plan right now. We have a busy 5 months, as you might imagine. As soon as we get there, it's going to get really busy because a Japanese vehicle is going to show up, a really big resupply vehicle called HTV. Will show up about a week or so after we arrive. And in that has a lot of science and research, of course, but also has a lot of things that we're going to be dealing with during our spacewalks. Right now, the plan is for Takuya Onishi, the Japanese astronaut, and myself to go outside and do 2 spacewalks to replace batteries on the outside of the space station. So those big batteries are actually inside the Japanese vehicle that's coming up. So we look forward to getting them out and getting them ready to go for our spacewalks. As the plan stands right now, Takuya, Anatoly, and Kate are supposed to come home towards the end of October. So after we finish our spacewalks, we'll be busy getting them ready to depart the space station and getting them back on their way back to Earth. And then we'll be alone for anywhere from up to 1 or 2 weeks. The 3 of us will be on the space station until the next crew arrives, which will be Peggy Whitson, Thomas Pesquet, and Oleg Novitsky. So we're looking forward to that as well. So once November, December timeframe hits, we're going to be doing a lot of science and research as well into the new year in January. And February kind of starts winding things down for us as we get ready to head back home. During our 5 months, we're going to have several visiting vehicles, so vehicles that only carry equipment or cargo come visit us while we're there. We're going to have several U.S. vehicles, the Japanese vehicle I mentioned earlier. And you know, those launches are always up in the air, but we look forward to all those vehicles arriving and us then grabbing most of those, sticking them on the space station. And it's kind of like Christmas every time one shows up because there's a bunch of fresh food and new clothes and new equipment for us to work on. So we're really excited about our mission.
Fantastic. We'll now take some questions from the audience. We'll start with the media here at Johnson Space Center. Then we'll go to the other NASA centers, reporters on the phone bridge, and then we'll take some questions from social media. We also have some guests in the audience today from the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Houston, so we'll take some questions from them too. If you have a question for social media, please use the hashtag AskNASA. And if you are on the phone bridge, if you have a question, please remember to press *1 and press *2 if your question has already been asked and you need to withdraw it. So with that, any questions from here? Yes, Mark.
Thank you very much. Mark Corroy with Aviation Week. And this is for Shane Kimbrough. I believe these batteries go on P6, the oldest of the solar power modules, if I'm right. If that's correct, could you talk about some of the challenges of, I guess you're going to take all of them off and replace all of them? Sounds like a big chore.
Yeah, so really it comes down to it's a shell game. We have a lot of big boxes that we're having to move around and then replace them with newer, smaller boxes. So technology, just like here on Earth, has gotten things a lot smaller. So really about the size of 2 batteries. The old batteries will now be replaced with just one of those. So we're going to have some empty space, so to speak, and in those spaces we're going to put things called adapter plates and then these new batteries on top. So it just comes down to a shell game. It's very choreographed. We've been practicing this in the NBL and the pool for the last year now, not just our crew, but other crews as well. So we're really making sure the procedures are well thought out, and the team that's working on that pretty much has it all ready to go for us now.
If I could ask a follow-up, I'm also interested in what your expedition would be or might be prepared to do in terms of advancing the commercial crew objectives, either with EVA or inside activity.
Yeah, good question, Mark. Prior to us getting there, if everything goes well, the crew in front of us will install the International Docking Adapter, the IDA, on the very front of the space station. That'll obviously allow commercial vehicles to dock there. That'll be a huge thing. And along with that is routing cables and connecting things that Kate and Jeff Williams are scheduled to do right now in August, I guess, is the plan right now. So hopefully that'll all be done. If not, then that potentially could be something that our crews would go out and do as well. So that could be either me and Kate or me and Takuya or Kate and Takuya. So that'll certainly be a big help to the station for commercial crew. We have a lot of research, of course, that we're doing that's going to advance commercial crew as well as the further exploration of the solar system down the road. So we're excited about those kind of things, of course.
Robert?
Hi, Robert Perlman with CollectSpace.com. Regarding yesterday's launch, how closely are, or how dependent of a smooth flight of MS-01 affects your flight of MS-02? Is there any chance that I believe you're planning for a 2-day rendezvous? Would that be shortened to the 4 orbit if this flight goes completely as planned?
I think the answer is unfortunately no. No, the first several flights are planned for 34 orbit because we actually have test objectives we're going to meet during those couple days before we get to the space station. And we're not doing specifically the same test that MS-1 is doing now. So there are different test objectives that the engineers and scientists on the ground in Russia want to see. So we'll have a different profile. Some of the tests will be similar, but in general, they're different profiles that we're going to do during those 2 days to make sure that vehicle gets really tested like it should before we start this 4-orbit rendezvous.
If I can ask a follow-up. Given the new satellite relay system, does that allow for any type of live broadcast from the Soyuz itself during that 2-day rendezvous?
That's a good question. I'm not sure the answer to that. I may have to defer to the cosmonauts. I know it's going to be a nice capability. I don't think we have all the things in place to make that happen now. But it would be great if we could have some telemetry and live video from the Soyuz during those couple days.
Yes, Soyuz MS include a new TV system, digital, and it allows completely get according satellite coverage data from vehicle and to vehicle also.
Haley, do we have any social media questions?
Yeah, we have one from Ben Evans on Twitter, and he is wondering, how does the training of an ISS commander differ from the training of a flight engineer? Are there any additional tasks that a commander trains for?
Yeah, good question. In general, it's the same training. When we're in the Soyuz, it's different. I think he's talking about space station. So on the space station, we do have a little bit of a different commander flow. I think in Russia, when I go over there, I get an extra 10 or 12 hours of specific commander training that I wouldn't have gotten if I was a flight engineer. Here in the U.S., I don't know what the hour number is, but there's kind of a small delta, I guess, of hours that I will get here because I'm the commander instead of a flight engineer.
Do we happen to have another one?
Yeah, so we have another one from Mariana on Twitter, and she is wondering, do you plan to take any photographs to share with us? I would love to see some auroras and storms.
Well, of course. I think taking pictures becomes our natural hobby up there in our downtime. And I look forward to sharing those, and hopefully you'll follow us on social media and be able to follow my accounts and get to see some pictures. I know some folks have sent some really nice things down. I will self-admit I'm not the greatest photographer, so hopefully I'll step up my game and be able to send some beautiful shots of auroras, like you mentioned, and maybe storms and other things that the Earth is experiencing.
Is there anything in particular any one of you guys wants to take pictures of while you're in orbit?
Houston.
Good answer.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything, Sergey?
A lot of things. I still doesn't finish the whole list of my future perspective.
Yeah, I want to take pictures of certainly places I've lived and maybe universities or schools I've been involved with. I'm going to do something unique and try to take a bunch of pictures of golf courses around the world because I don't think that's something anybody's done before. So hopefully those will come out okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Sophie Sanchez with Chicago Now. I had a question for Shane. There's a lot of resident student-based programs happening right now in the ISS. We have several students here today. Is there any program specifically that you're looking forward to communicating with students here on Earth?
I know there's a handful maybe that we'll get to do that with, and I'm not sure which ones they are except for one called Spheres. I know that's something that has been used almost every year the last several years with students on the ground, and they actually are controlling them, so it's going to be really neat to interact with them and see their excitement. I know there's a handful of others that will involve students as well. All of those are going to be really exciting for me. I love working with students. I used to be a former professor and teacher, so I really enjoy seeing them get excited about, in this case, math and science and space.
Now, speaking of students, we have a few in the audience. Do any of you guys have any questions? Yes, sir. One or two for you guys.
Can you tell the climate change of Earth from space?
Can you tell the climate change of Earth from space?
So while we're in space, we're kind of in an environment like you're sitting in right now. So we're on the space station. It's kind of a closed environment. It's controlled with air conditioning, just like we are in this room. So in that sense, you don't feel it at all. You know, if you really went outside, you'd see a big change. So when we go out for our spacewalks, you actually do sense some of these, the big climate differences in space and Earth. When you go outside to do a spacewalk, or in general, if anybody went outside, it's about 200 degrees when the sun's out, and it's about minus 200 when the sun goes away. So really big temperature differences, which we don't experience, that range of temperatures on Earth. So that's one thing. Of course, there's no air to breathe up there if you went outside without your spacesuit on. So that's a huge difference. Like humans cannot survive in the environment of space without protection. Unlike here on Earth, we're lucky enough we can walk around and we have air to breathe and we can survive. So those are some of the differences, I guess. Hopefully that answered your question. Thank you.
Young lady all the way in the back. Or, sorry, gentleman all the way in the back. Yes.
Does floating in space make me dizzy?
Does floating make you dizzy? Is that what you asked?
Mm-hmm. Does floating in space make you dizzy?
No, it's just the coolest thing in the world. You would love it. Everybody loves it. Flying around is something I think most of us dreamed of since we were younger than you folks that are here. And getting to do it for real and really not being in control is kind of interesting at first. And then you really learn how to fly around and be efficient and not break things and not run into things. So that's kind of fun, and it'll be neat watching Sergey for the first time learning how to fly. And Andrey and I could be laughing at him now. It'll take us a few days to get back into flying mode as well. But in general, it doesn't make you dizzy. You may have seen astronauts before do a bunch of somersaults on TV or something. And if you do a lot of those, yeah, you can make yourself dizzy. But in general, just floating around is not.
So we're going to get to watch you guys do a lot of those and make yourselves dizzy?
Yeah, we'll try. We'll see. We'll see.
Any other questions from you guys? Yes, ma'am. Right here in the blue glasses. If you could stand up when you ask your question, that would be easier for us to hear.
What are the qualifications to be an astronaut?
What are the qualifications to be an astronaut?
Wow, good question. We're actually having an astronaut selection right now, so it's somewhat fresh in everybody's mind around here. There are several basic qualifications, and mainly including education that you need. You need a background in math, science, or engineering. And that's an undergraduate degree is kind of the baseline. Of course, if you have a graduate degree in one of those fields, it only helps your application. So most folks these days have a master's degree or a PhD or a doctorate degree in a math, science, or engineering field. They also look for people with unique backgrounds, whether that's scientists or military officers or pilots or people maybe that jumped out of airplanes or climbed mountains and those kind of unique things that a lot of people don't do. And I think what they're kind of looking for there maybe is just people that can operate in kind of really strange environments and environments that you don't have a whole lot of things. Like here on Earth, we're pretty blessed in general with some pretty nice stuff. So if you can find someone that can live kind of without all that stuff, that's one of the traits I think they look for in astronauts.
And we have a call on the phone bridge. Sarah Lewin?
Hi, this is Sarah Lewin from Space.com. I was curious, sorry, I'm hearing a little feedback. I was curious whether you could describe how the three of you work together as a team.
Thanks, Sarah. Good question. We've been training now for a little over 2 years together. I think I took my first trip to Russia about 2 years ago, and they started coming over to the U.S. shortly after that. So we've obviously grown over these last couple of years. We didn't know each other, or I didn't know them at all previously. I'm sure they knew each other, but I didn't know them. And so really our first training session together, I met them one day, and 3 or 4 days later, they threw us out in the middle of the woods for winter survival training in the middle of Russia. So it was 8 feet deep of snow and freezing cold, and we survived for 3 or 4 days together, and that's how we got to know each other initially. So we needed some skills. We needed to learn how to use teamwork, communication, and all those things which transfer over, obviously, to making a good crew for spaceflight, and that's why we do training like that. Then we eventually got into the Soyuz and started training together as a crew in the vehicle, the Russian vehicle, which is really great training for me and our crew together, just to see how each other works and trying to figure out everybody's responsibilities and roles before we take off for space. What else have we done? We've done water survival training together as well. Last summer we did that in Russia, where they throw you out in the middle of a lake in a capsule, and you kind of survive and you see if you can use all the equipment and get out safely. So we learned how to do that in case we actually land in the water, which doesn't happen very often, thank goodness. But if so, we'll be ready to go. But in general, I think our crew we're really coming together. We had final exams as a backup crew in February and March, and I think at that point we really started coming together as a crew. I really saw it as kind of gelling and really performing well, and we did really well in the final exams, and hopefully we'll do the same here in a few months when we go back to Russia for our prime flow final exams.
Andrey, what's it like to be training for your second time up in Space Station? What's been different? What's been the same for you?
Can I use Russian language?
Absolutely.
Okay. Конечно, эта подготовка отличалась от предыдущей подготовки, в первую очередь тем, что многое, что здесь, с чем я знакомился уже второй раз, для меня это было повторение пройденного материала, и это было легче.
Of course, the training was very different. First of all, when I was training the second time, everything was more like a repeat. And so it was good to have a refresher on everything that I learned the first time.
С другой стороны, возможно, я немножко лучше представляю, чем те, у кого пока еще нет опыта длительного полета на станции, что действительно важно. а что можно просто принять к сведению.
On the other hand, I think I have a better understanding than those who are flying for the first time to really know what is important for station and what you can just take as information.
Но в любом случае лишних знаний для космонавта и астронавта не бывает, поэтому чем больше знаешь, тем более успешно выполняешь свою работу.
But there's no such thing as extra knowledge or too much knowledge for a crew member. The more you know, the better you are off as a crew member.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the media in the room? Robert?
Hi, Robert Pearl with Collect Space again. When you get up there, beam will have been, the Bigelow Expandable Activity Module will have been inflated and deployed for some time. Has there been any further talk about utilization? There was some hint at maybe some commercial utilization on board, or what activities you might, how you'd interact with it, or is it still just inspections?
From what I've been trained on, it's just inspections. So every 5 to 6 months, we'll go inside, get some readings from all the sensors inside, send them down to the ground, and then close the hatch. So there's not going to be a whole lot of activity, at least during our mission. I think that's the case for the next couple of years. At least that's the plan right now. That could obviously change as time goes on, but that's a plan for us.
All right, I saw some other young hands go up. Who else has a question? Young lady with the blue bows. You can please stand up when you ask a question. Thank you.
What are the do-nots of space?
What are the do-nots of space? What shouldn't you do in space?
What shouldn't you do? Wow, that list is long. Obviously, safety of the crew is really the primary mission for all of us, to make sure we all stay safe. So anything that's going to be unsafe for us, whether it's an activity we're doing, we're not doing it correctly, those kind of things, you just really got to be sure that you're going to be safe. And we can, there's, of course, emergencies can happen just like they do here on Earth, and we've got to be ready to handle those. So we don't want to do anything that maybe would cause one of those emergencies. That would be very bad. But in general, we're trained very well to know the dangers and know kind of what we need to do and not do. Procedures, we use procedures religiously so that we don't make mistakes that may cause one of these bad things to happen. So we want to make sure we're helping each other out. So as a crew, if you have time to get somebody else to help you, that's always a benefit, so that you're not maybe doing something on your own and you might skip a step in the procedure unintentionally, but you still may skip it. But you have somebody else helping you and looking at it, that usually doesn't happen. So I don't know how else to answer that question. You don't want to steal your buddy's food. So that's probably one thing you don't want to do, because they get mad.
But it's okay to trade lunches.
We can trade, yes. We'll do some good trades. I'll get to eat some great Russian food, and we'll share our American food with them, and that kind of thing. But you don't want to go stealing all of their food, because they get angry when that happens. So. And I would as well. So that's probably the biggest do not when you're up there. But also is, we're living in a small area in general, so you just have to kind of maintain your own things. Don't be a slob. Don't have your stuff all over the place, because it gets in everybody else's way. So that's maybe good training for all of us here on the ground as well.
So you got to clean your room every week.
You got to clean your room every day. So yeah.
Sergey, as a first-time flyer, what's been the best piece of advice you've been given?
I hope my best advice is I'll get on board, because I have to, as I call them, not IP, VEP, very experienced person.
I like it.
And I hope everything will in the future.
I'm sure you'll do wonderfully. Any other questions from the... Yes, ma'am.
How do you adapt in outer space?
How do you adapt in outer space?
That's a good question. Your body is pretty amazing, and it really adapts after 3 or 4 days. It adapts really well to this really strange environment that you're in. If you can imagine, you're floating around, but also everything inside your body is floating around in different places than it's used to being. So your body kind of reacts to that initially, but then after a couple of days, it settles out really nicely. And we have this thing called a fluid shift. So a lot of the water and fluid in your body kind of shifts up towards your head. And so you may notice, if you're watching Saturday or Sunday after you see the crew dock to the space station, you may see their faces kind of all very full looking. And that's because the fluid is kind of shifted up towards their head, and that's very common. And so your body, sometimes it stays there, sometimes it goes away. Everybody's a little bit different, but in general, your body adapts really well, and you get used to being in a place where, guess what, there's no upside down, there's no up or down. You can be upside down talking to me, and it's not weird. It's totally normal. All right, so for humans on Earth, it's very tough to kind of get your brain around that. But after a few days, when you see somebody hanging upside down talking to you, you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. And it's just normal. So your body reacts really well.
Do we have any social media questions?
We have one from Elisa on Twitter, and she is wondering, along with new experiments, are there any ongoing experiments that you will get to either continue or wrap up from something the last crew set up?
Let me think about that. I know there's plenty that will be ongoing. Fluid shifts is one of them that I kind of mentioned a minute ago, but it's an experiment where we're trying to quantify why this phenomenon happens and what it's actually doing to our bodies. I will be helping out Sergey in this fluid shifts experiments. The Russians and all the other astronauts are using this. So we do some of the activities on the Russian side of the space station and some on the U.S. side. Also, Peggy Whitson and Kate Rubins are doing that experiment, so I will hopefully get to help them out as well. There are, what are other ones I'm thinking of? There's plenty that have to do with bone loss and muscle loss that most of us have signed up to participate in. So those I will learn, obviously, from the folks when I get there, how to do these things, and it'll carry on to me, and then I'll pass them along to the next folks so that we can hopefully try to quantify why we're losing bone mass, and bone density, and be able to help folks as we try to get out to someplace like Mars.
Awesome. And we have another one from Mariana on Twitter, and she's wondering what the 2-day rendezvous is like for you. Do you have to be strapped into your seat the whole time, or can you get up and move around? What is that like? Yeah,
that's a great question. So we're, like you mentioned, we're going to get to experience this 2-day rendezvous in a very small volume. So it'll be really interesting. What you do get to get out of your seat, to answer your question. So after several hours, you get into space. You get things all set up on the vehicle. You run through your checklist, and then you get to get out of your spacesuit actually too, which will be nice after being in that for several hours. So we'll get out of that. We'll get comfortable in like shorts and a t-shirt, and we'll kind of hang out in those clothes for the couple days that we're doing these other tests on the vehicle and while we're orbiting the Earth. Just prior to getting to the space station, we'll get back in our spacesuits and get back in our seats, strapped in, just like we were at launch. And that's to protect us in case something happens as we're going to dock to the space station. So once we get there, of course, then it takes a while for all the pressures to equalize. We get out of our spacesuits, get into a nice looking flight suit, because we'll get to come across the hatch and have a little video conference with our families shortly after that. So that's how that's going to work.
Awesome. And we have one more fun one that I think Shane, you might be interested in. We have a question from Kelly on Twitter, and you mentioned you're going to be taking pictures of golf courses from space. Are there any other live sporting events you plan to tune into from space while you're up there?
I plan, as many as possible. I'm a big sports fan, so obviously we'll be up there in college football season and the pro football season, so I look forward to watching as many games as I can. We don't have a lot of free time, by the way, but they can stream up games to us, which will be nice to kind of catch maybe 10, 15 minutes at a time of a game. But just to stay connected, I think that'll help me stay connected with the Earth. The World Series is going on. I'm a baseball fan as well, so maybe we'll be tied into that. And of course, the Super Bowl next year will be in Houston, so we're going to have a lot of events maybe tied into the Super Bowl to be able to participate with that activity.
Are there any other questions in the room? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Sophie Sanchez with Chicago again. Shane, building on the science experiments question that was asked earlier, your first stay on the station was more of a maintenance and building experience, and this is going to be very science heavy. Do you find the training and the process for that more or less challenging?
I would say it's equally as challenging, and this is really I'm going to get the best of both worlds, because really my first month, like I mentioned, is all about doing spacewalks, and it's very similar to my shuttle mission. And we went up there and just went outside and did, repaired some things, put some new things in, and that'll be very, very similar. But once November, December, January, February hit, it'll be very science intensive, like you mentioned. I'm not a scientist by trade, so it's been really interesting to me to kind of learn about all these experiments and meet some of the scientists that have really dedicated a huge chunk of their careers to a certain experiment we're going to work on. So we have a lot of responsibility to make sure we do it correctly for that scientist, and they're from all around the world, so it's kind of neat to be able to work with all these folks from all around the world. And 5, 10 years from now, I think all of this, whatever the science that we do now, will actually be getting published and realized and helping people back here on Earth. So that's kind of an exciting thing for me to be part of that.
Any other questions? Young man, third one in the back.
How do you control the robots you use in space?
How do we control the robots? Is that the question?
Yes, sir.
So we have a robotic arm that we use that's on the outside of the space station. So we control that from the inside with hand controllers, very similar to like a fighter jet or a helicopter maybe, or the simulators that you guys may have on video games. So we control it with that, and we have cameras all over the outside of the space station as well as on the robotic arm itself, which help us to make sure we're not going to run into anything. So that's very important, of course. But we use that to move things around. We move people around sometimes on the end of that, and we move equipment around as well. We have a couple of those arms, one from Canada on the outside, and the Japanese also have a kind of a smaller robotic arm that we use sometimes to do similar things. The robots on board, you may have heard of a thing called Robonauts. That's one of the experiments we'll get to mess around with while we're up there. But it looks like kind of looks like a spacey astronaut that may be out of a movie. But we get to do some neat tasks with that. Repair it when it breaks. So sometimes it doesn't feel so good, so we have to help it out and repair it. But otherwise, it'll be doing some tasks. And all that technology is kind of fun right now, but it's going to be things that we'll use down the road as we get into going into out of low Earth orbit, going into deep space with humans.
I saw a few more hands going up, I think. Yes, ma'am.
How long before a man reaches Mars?
How long before a man reaches Mars?
That's a great question. Of course, I don't have the exact answer, but my guess would be, I don't know, maybe 20 years from now. So when you kids are old like us, we'll hopefully be sending people to Mars. It'll be your generation that actually sends the first person to Mars. So that's kind of cool if you guys are interested in that kind of thing. Maybe it'll be you.
I don't know. Would any one of you three volunteer to go to Mars?
There.
Yes, we'll leave that to you guys.
Any other? All the way in the back, second one in. Yes, sir.
Does every astronaut have an opportunity to go to space?
Does every astronaut have an opportunity to go to space?
Very good question. I would say in general, yes. Every now and then there's something that happens, maybe medically, that it won't allow them to go to space. But in general, you come in as an astronaut candidate, you go through training. Once you pass all of those exams, then you're ready to be assigned to a mission. And I think in general, most cases, that's you'll get assigned to a mission and you'll fly in space.
I think I saw another hand back. Yes, sir.
What's the name of the rocket used to go to space?
It's the name of the rocket that we use.
The rocket has the same name as a vehicle, Soyuz, but a different additional part. The rocket has Soyuz FG, and the vehicle is Soyuz MS. It depends on some technical nuances.
So the Soyuz is the way we Americans say it. It's called Soyuz in Russian, like Sergey mentioned. So if you ever hear Soyuz, it could be talking about the rocket, or it could be talking about the spacecraft. And like he mentioned, they're sitting, the spacecraft sits on top of the rocket, and they just have a little couple letters at the end of the Soyuz that make it different. So the MS, if you see MS, that means that's the spacecraft we're on. If you see FG, then that's the rocket.
Yes, sir.
How long do you stay in space?
So all the missions are a little bit different. In general, we say 6 months, but it usually ends up being about 5.5 months. And our mission will end up being, if it stays the way it's planned right now, it'll be right at 5 months. Long time.
You guys would probably stay a little longer if you could.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. It's always fun, but I think we're always ready to come home. So.
What will you miss most when you're in orbit?
I'll certainly miss my family and friends and just being with them. We've got a lot of dynamics going on in our family with kids going to college and things, so I kind of miss those first experiences for my daughters. But I'll get to be in touch, obviously, but just not here present physically. So that's what I'll miss the most. What will you guys miss about Earth?
Of course, my son, my parents, my relatives. But I think staying between the sky, I mean space and Earth, it's a great opportunity to feel that they're near me, and I think it's exciting.
Yeah. Andrey?
Семья, друзья, ну, кое-что из земной еды.
Family, friends, and something from Earth food.
Yeah. Very good.
Yeah, there's no pizza in space for you guys.
Yeah, I know. So.
Any other questions?
We have one.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, that's somewhat related to that topic. Elisa wants to know, how do you communicate with your families when you're in space?
We have several ways to communicate. So email is now almost like it is here on Earth, so it's pretty instantaneous. Sometimes we have issues, but in general it's instantaneous email, so that's nice. We have a phone that we can use to call home as well. They can't call us, but we can call them. So it's kind of a one-way deal. And once a week we'll get to do a video conference with our families, usually scheduled on the weekend during our downtime. So that'll be a nice thing to not just be able to talk to them, but to see them and see what's going on. And now it's so nice because you can do it on an iPad, or they could be anywhere. They don't have to be here at Johnson Space Center like they used to be. What other ways can we communicate? I think that's about it in general. So, thanks.
And we have a call on the phone bridge. Sarah?
Hi. I was curious what the most complicated experiment each of you has trained to do is, or, an example.
Good question. I'm trying to think. They're all complicated for me, so clear. No, it's all of them actually are, even with very limited background in science like myself, the procedures are so well laid out, and the history and the background of the experiment that we get with the kind of a packet of the procedures is so well done. And that's done by a lot of people here on the ground to make sure that we can all just perform the experiment without maybe messing up the data or the research. So I don't really consider any of them any more difficult than the others. Maybe I'll have a different answer when I get home, but as for now, that's what I think.
I think the most complicated experiment which I expect on board will circle up. It's a ESA experiment using Marius equipment, muscle atrophy research experiment system, something like that. And when it's set up, it takes half of module Columbus European.
Wow.
And a lot of equipment, a lot of laptop, cables, and I'm really looking forward to do it.
Весь космический полет, весь наш космический полет, и не только наш, это большой эксперимент, который состоит из многих-многих частей. Это эксперименты над техникой, над научным материалом, над мышами, которые полетят с нами в космос. Это эксперименты над экипажем, который будет выполнять свою работу.
The entire space flight is like one big experiment, not just ours, but everyone's. And it has many parts. For example, we're testing new technology. There's a scientific component. We'll do experiments on the mice that will fly along with us. And the crew itself is kind of like a lab rat.
И все результаты вот этого большого эксперимента под названием «Наш космический полет», я надеюсь, будут той базой, которую смогут использовать будущие поколения, ребята, которые сейчас сидят напротив нас, в своей будущей жизни и будущих космических полетах.
And the results of this big experiment that is called our space flight hopefully will be useful for the children that are sitting right here in front of us in their life and also in future space exploration.
Do we have any other questions in the room? Do we have any social media?
I think this one is a good one to be related to preparing for space and doing some of the complicated things you do there. So Tom on Twitter is wondering how realistic the pool work in the NBL is to actually doing the work in space. Is that a good preparation for you?
Yeah, the pool, the NBL Neutral Buoyancy Lab, is an amazing training facility. It's not perfect, of course, because guess what? The pool still has gravity. But in general, it's a really nice analog so that when we get in the pool, we have divers that kind of move weights around our suit to make us float. So when they let go of us, you don't sink or float. That's why they call it neutrally buoyant. And so that's kind of simulates space, right? But if you go upside down in the pool, guess what? The blood still rushes to your head. The weight of the spacesuit is on your shoulders. So that's not realistic in space. You can go in any orientation in space and you're going to feel exactly the same. So that's the biggest difference. But in general, with the space station, the whole space station pretty much in the water, everything just like it is on the outside of the space station. It's an incredible trainer for knowing where you are and then knowing how to do the tasks that we're being trained to do. And then some potentially that we don't really get trained on, but if something breaks, we have to go fix it. Just having that knowledge of where things are and how to take certain equipment in and out and put new ones in and out. That's all incredible training that we get at the NBL.
What's been the most challenging part of training for each one of you?
For me, it's probably the travel. There's a lot of travel involved. Over these couple of years, you're probably gone about half the time, I would say. And we get to train. It's really a unique experience. We get to train in Russia and Japan and in Germany, where the European Astronaut Training Center is. So that's really unique because all those countries have modules on the space station. So they want to make sure we're trained on their modules, as well as many of experiments that those countries specifically want us to perform while we're up in space. Most of our time for us is spent in Russia now because the vehicle we fly on is Russian. All right, the Soyuz vehicle obviously is made in Russia, and we train on it in Star City, Russia. So that's where I see these gentlemen most often. But that's probably been the hardest thing, just doing that and missing events of my kids and missing my wife and other family things. So.
I agree with Shane about Soyuz training because I think it's the most complicated, most difficult part of our preparation. But about traveling, for me it's part of rest. I enjoy it.
Different perspective.
Jet lag?
Jet lag.
Yeah.
If you guys come up with any secrets for how to get over jet lag, let us know.
Yeah, it's kind of I was talking to my colleague Jeff Williams, and speaking of the jet lag thing, over these last couple of years, we're kind of always in this jet lag state. And he says that's the best preparations for spaceflight you can ever have, because when you're up in space, you feel okay, but you never feel quite 100%. And it's just you're kind of operating and doing pretty challenging things, and you're just not 100%. So this jet lag recovery is pretty good training for spaceflight, apparently.
Good to know. We're all training for spaceflight.
Yeah.
Do you have another one, Haley?
So we have Linda Hughes on Facebook, and she's wondering, from your previous mission, is there anything you're looking forward to experiencing again, or is it going to be different on space station? Any thing that you're looking forward to for this mission?
Yeah, it's a lot different up there this time than it was my last trip, so I'm really looking forward to some of the things that we brought up there on that mission, but we didn't get a chance to set up before we left. The new exercise equipment called ARED, Advanced Resistive Exercise Device. We got to bring that up in 2008, and it's been working really well for all of our astronauts and cosmonauts, keeping our bones and muscles healthy. So it'll be neat to see that, actually use it. And the thing called the cupola, which is kind of a 360-degree window, little module, I guess, that looks at the Earth all the time. That was not there last time I was there. So I'm really looking forward to hopping in there and spending some time taking pictures. I guess that's about it for me. Thanks. Andrey?
Что касается меня, для меня предыдущие полгода, 6 месяцев пролетели как 6 недель. И я думаю, что этот полет также пролетит очень быстро из-за того, что те впечатления, которые там есть во время полета, они, к сожалению, очень легко впитываются и очень тяжело потом с ними расставаться.
Well, the last time I was there, the 6 months flew by as fast as 6 weeks, and I think for this time it will be the same thing, because the experiences that you have on board the station, you absorb them very easily, but then it is really hard to part with them.
Do we have any other questions in the audience? Mark.
Thanks, Mark, for Aviation Week and Space Technology again. Can you sort of explain where you are in your overall training flow? Are you kind of at the end of the session here in the U.S. at Johnson, and what happens to y'all? If that's kind of close, what happens to you?
Yeah, so we're kind of winding down is the best way to put it. Sergey and Andrey have another 3 or 4 more days here in the U.S. We'll have a big kind of our final exam, if you want to call it that, emergency training event with the crew that's following us, so Peggy, Toma, and Oleg. They'll return from Baikonur. They were the backup crew for the launch yesterday. They come in this weekend. We'll have that training with them on Monday. And then these gentlemen will head back to Russia for a little time off, I think, as well as some more training. For me, myself, I got a little bit of time off coming up, and then I have a trip to Japan left towards the end of July, where I'll go get finally trained on some experiments and their modules. The HTV that's coming up, I'll get specifically trained on that a little more. And then I'll come back for another week of work here in the first week of August, and then I head out mid-August to Russia. About 6 weeks before launch is pretty normal for the right-seater like myself to show up in Star City for us to get ready for our final exams. Go through that, and then several ceremonies over in Star City and in Moscow prior to us leaving for Baikonur. Usually 2 or 3 weeks prior to launch, we'll head down there and be in quarantine prepping for the launch.
Any other questions here? Yes, sir.
This is a question for Mr. Shane. What's your favorite part of your job?
Good question. I tell you, I could say that right now, or I could say it in my previous job as well in the Army, and it's all about the people. I've gotten to work with incredible people, very diverse people, very different backgrounds, but everybody brings something to the table, and that's what I've really learned through my experience in the Army as well as here at NASA. Everybody has something to add to the team, and we're all part of a team. Even though the 3 of us are going to launch on this spacecraft here in a few months, we really have a team of thousands of people that have trained us, that have gotten the spacecraft ready, that'll be working our missions from mission controls all around the world while we're up there. And they're all part of the team just like we are. And everybody I've gotten to work with is extremely motivated and dedicated to making our mission successful. So it's pretty neat when you work in an environment like that, that everybody's kind of making sure that we're going to get back home safely to our families and friends, and everybody's kind of dedicated to mission success. So I've been very lucky to work with amazing people.
I absolutely agree with Shane. To work with different people in several countries, it's a very exciting opportunity. And also for me, because I never flew in space and flown. And I never flew faster than 2 Mach and higher than 20 kilometers. And it's a great opportunity to pilot a vehicle, to make some tests, and to feel how it's controlled by me.
Okay. Andrey?
Я полностью согласен с моими членами экипажа.
I fully concur with my crew members.
I think we have time for a couple more questions. Do we have any more? Do we have any on social media, Haley?
Yeah, so this is a very general one, but I think it's good. Obviously, there's a lot of training that goes into being an astronaut, and even back from this person is really interested. How did you motivate yourself to get through school and all the classes you were taking in college? Did you have the astronaut career in mind? Was that part of what motivated you with all the classes you took in college?
Well, I did want to be an astronaut since I was a little kid. I can't say that all through my schooling I was thinking about that. So I made the decision to go to West Point, the United States Military Academy at West Point, to be an engineer there. So when I made that decision, even though I wanted to be an astronaut my whole life, I thought that that dream was kind of gone at that point, because I was like, oh, you have to go in the Army and serve in the Army, and that was fine. I was fine with it. Little did I know you could be in the Army and be an astronaut. So I did realize that after graduating from college, and then that dream came back of, all right, let me see if I can do this. I needed some more education, and the Army was generous enough to provide me with all of my education, with the master's and bachelor's degree, engineering degrees, and that all played into helping me be a viable candidate for the astronaut program. And then I just got lucky enough to get selected. So.
Of course, background helps us, and also we can get experience from our life, because on board we are going to be not only researchers and also like space plumber, space electricians, cleaners, yes. And it also helps us.
Я по образованию являюсь инженером-ракетчиком, поэтому все те базы, которые нужно использовать для того, чтобы осваивать нашу технику, у меня была еще в институте.
In terms of my education, I'm an engineer specializing in rocket building, so all of the knowledge that I needed, I was able to obtain back at university.
И большой опыт, который был получен в процессе работы в Центре управления полетами, позволяет очень хорошо понимать все, что происходит у нас на космическом корабле, ну и поэтому, может быть, легче принимать правильные решения в случае необходимости.
And on top of that, the experience that I gained at the Mission Control Center allows me to better understand what is happening at the space vehicle or the space station, which helps in turn to make the right decision in an urgent situation.
And to follow up a little bit, I think I don't know what they were getting at with the question, but I'll just add this in case it's part of it. All of us did engineering, had an engineering or science or math backgrounds, and that's true for all the astronauts and cosmonauts. But we're not folks that just got average grades, okay? You had to do really well in whatever field you were pursuing, and that wasn't just in the classroom, it was also in your jobs when we went out into the workplace. So if you're interested in this kind of line of work, you need to be doing really well and doing your best so that others can see that and potentially bring you here.
We have maybe one more from social media?
Yeah. So this one is very specific, but they've heard a lot of astronauts mention it. Are there certain smells you will miss about the planet Earth while you're in space?
That's a good question, yeah. And I thought about mentioning that earlier when Jenny asked what I'm going to miss. But yeah, just the smells of Earth and kind of fresh cut grass, which I love. And you kind of miss that, even being in the mountains and smelling the mountain air, which we don't have around here, but we have that in the U.S. and other places around the Earth. But I do think I'll miss that greatly, because you're kind of in a closed environment. Even though we have a nice air conditioning system and circulation system, it's kind of smells like a gym all the time, you know, instead of fresh smells like you're used to here on Earth quite often.
I'm really looking forward for cockpit smells, vehicle smells. And I'm rookie, and it's my best goal.
That's a good one.
Когда мы в прошлый раз приземлились на корабле «Союз» и открыли люк нашей спускаемой капсулы, вот я почувствовал запах степи, запах травы разогретой, и в тот момент подумал, что это тот самый запах, который больше всего не хватало в космосе.
When we last returned on the Soyuz and we opened the hatch of the descent module, I felt the smell of the steppe, the warm grass, and then I realized that that's probably the smell that I missed most.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for being here with us today, and thank you, everybody, for being part of the Expedition 4950 Crew News Conference. You can follow Shane on Twitter at @Astro_Kimbrough. You can also find out about the crew's flight experiences on Instagram by going to instagram.com/ISS. And for more information about the International Space Station, please go to www.nasa.gov/station.